Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome all of you to Sable International's webinar today. Today we'll be speaking about Mauritius fairly holistically, and I'd like to welcome our specialists and panelists who I'll be introducing to you shortly. But before we get going, maybe just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, thanks very much all of you for making your time to jump on board and listen to all of us. I think it's amazing that at this time of December, we've had a really good subscription to the webinar. So thanks very much for making time, and we hope that you find it informative and interesting. A little bit of housekeeping. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there is actually a chat box where you can ask questions. So please feel free during the course of the webinar just to post your questions there, and towards the end, we'll just do a brief Q&A if there are any questions. And we'll also make sure that you know how to contact us if you have any particular questions for any of the panelists. So once again, thank you. And Meg, we can have the next slide. Thanks. So just a little bit about Sable International for those of you that don't know our company. We've been in business since 1995. Essentially, we're a headquartered UK business that historically has worked very extensively with the South African expat communities in the UK. And more recently, we work with South African expat communities all over the world, and most importantly, in South Africa itself, which is where the majority of our client base has sort of grown. We do deal with a lot of other nationalities around the world in the jurisdictions that we operate, but I still think that the fundamental DNA is really South African. Our business is quite multifaceted. We sort of describe ourselves as cross-border specialists. So if you're living in South Africa and you make an investment offshore, the minute there's a border between yourself and an investment, there comes all sorts of other complexity rather than just making an investment in one's own country. There are tax considerations, there are all sorts of other planning and considerations in terms of moving capital offshore that one needs to consider. So as a business, we help clients with their cross-border tax affairs. We help them moving money. We can help with Reserve Bank clearances. We are an authorized and regulated foreign exchange provider. We do cross-border wealth and structuring management. And then we also have a very big immigration component to our group, where we help people with nationality matters. And we also help people with immigration to many countries, of which the UK is probably still our most popular destination. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the EU, and we do now a lot of work in Mauritius. So I think all South Africans are fairly familiar with Mauritius, so that's really what today's about. Recently, about a year ago, we invested in a business that does education abroad. So at the beginning of this year, it was sort of my time to think the one piece of the puzzle that we haven't really dealt with is international real estate. So we decided at the beginning of 2022 to set up Sable International Real Estate Investment. It really made sense. And that was when Megan joined the team. She's got many years of experience. So Megan, I'm going to let you maybe just briefly introduce yourself to our guests.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, good to be on board. So my name is Megan Copley. I've been in real estate investment professional services for about 15 years, having worked in Europe and the UK. I now joined Sable to bring some of that experience to help the Sable clients who are looking to diversify their portfolio into real estate assets around the world, and bring some of my experience and advice to the clients. So yeah, that's briefly what I do. And today we'll be focusing around Mauritius with my partner Imelda, who's based in Mauritius, to help us more specifically help you in that jurisdiction. So over to you, Imelda, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Megan. And also nice to be with you, Samina. We work very closely as a team, and really happy to be part of the Sable team in terms of Mauritius on the ground. Specifically on the property side and what is available, Mauritius is really an exciting market right now. And the focus being on the South African market from our point of view is really continues to be a growing market. Originally from South Africa, as you can hear, I've had the privilege of being based in Mauritius for the past 15 years. So yes, I think the experience on the ground of what is available, how things have changed in the last 12 years since the government of Mauritius opened up this location for foreign investment. The experience of that, the knowledge, as well as understanding the South African market, which is where I come from, and being able to speak the same language really is what stands us in good stead in terms of the entire Sable team to assist people that are looking to Mauritius for investment purposes, residency purposes, and all the other benefits that we'll touch on during the presentation. So really happy to be on board, and we hope to move closer with roadshows, et cetera, as we go forward with the actual offerings that are available. So happy to meet everybody.
Thanks, Imelda. And over to Samina, if you could quickly introduce yourself as well.
Meg, I think we may have lost Samina. So what would look, Samina, when she pops back on, she can then just say a few words about herself. All right. So I think very quickly, what I'd like to maybe do is just give you some context. I've been with Sable International. I started Sable in South Africa in 2010, and I've worked very closely with a group before that when I lived in the UK. And as I mentioned, we are essentially a UK-based company. We have a big operation in South Africa. But I head up what's called Sable Investment Migration as one of my portfolios. And as a leading player in the South African market of people looking to externalize themselves and their families, we have a really good understanding of what the drivers are and what South Africans are looking at to do in terms of a possible international move. Megan and I had a very successful trip recently to Mauritius, and I must say, I think Mauritius, from a resonation with South African perspective, is a fantastic destination. We really like it. I think it's really well known now that Mauritius is a serious hub for financial services. There are a lot of other, obviously, tourism-related businesses. I think they probably took a bit of strain during COVID, like we all did around the world, I think, in tourism, but I think it certainly bounced back. And the trend of people looking at Mauritius as an alternative option, whether it's for investment or to physically relocate, I think it's a very compelling offering. Certainly from a lifestyle perspective, it's very close to South Africa. And I think from a climate and whatever perspective, it resonates. And I think that it's a very safe environment, and it's a good place where one can run a business from internationally. And we do live in a very globalized world at the moment. So part of how we approach things is when we engage with a client is we'll have a chat to them and understand what they're looking to achieve. That's always the first question. And then we'll sort of try and help them build a solution. And without a doubt, Mauritius is one of the most popular solutions. So that's just a little bit from my side. I think interestingly, there's some macro and micro things that I'd just like to talk about a little. There are lots of factors that push one to make a consideration to move abroad. It's a very vulnerable time in a family's life when they make a decision to leave their home country and go abroad. And we see it very often where people make very bad decisions because they're emotional, they're motivated possibly for the wrong reasons. They've got people trying to sell them solutions that don't necessarily fit. And we always say to people, don't run from something. What you should always try and do is run towards something that you want to be. So go and understand, do your homework and understand what is it about a particular jurisdiction that's going to work for you. Don't run away, because that's the best way to make a mistake. So understanding Mauritius, and this might be your first step in the journey of understanding it, it's really the right way to approach it. The whole world at the moment, if you read the mainstream media and social media, seems to have a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty. But I don't think it detracts from the fact that the South Africa specific problems that have been building and building over the last 10 to 15 years, they're not going away. So we don't advocate that people leave South Africa necessarily, but in a globalized world where South Africa is still very much an emerging market and forms a very small part of the global wealth, is that hedging your investments and having a plan B are often a good strategy for the future, particularly maybe for your family and your children. So that's how we approach it. The grass isn't always greener on the other side, although I must say that things are very green in Mauritius. So I think that's enough from my side. We all know the challenges that we have in South Africa. We're currently experiencing terrible load shedding, which I think is going to carry on for a while. We just have to learn to adapt and hedge. So yeah, that's just a little bit from me. I think real estate's always a great balancing investment in one's portfolio. We all have availability now to take quite a lot of money offshore every year. South African taxpayers can take up to 11 million rand per year per taxpayer to go and invest in assets offshore. And we see many South Africans taking advantage of this and investing in good real estate abroad. So hence the fact that we are playing very actively in the international real estate space and very much in Mauritius. So Meg, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. So we've touched on it a little bit, but I'll touch on obviously the fundamentals of real estate investment, offshore real estate investment. We cover the globe, not just Mauritius. So for the purposes of this webinar, the focus is Mauritius, but for anyone who is interested, we can advise on most places around the world. There's many things to consider. We've got the currency aspect. We've got the different political environments, what drives different markets. And really importantly, we've always got to consider how that yield, how that rental is paid, and why in some markets that's actually more secure and stable than in others. Property itself has historically given people a sense of financial stability and security. It's a physical asset. It's a roof over someone's head. You retain that investment exposure by making a monthly payment, be that to a mortgage or be that to expenses. It's a reminder of that stability, and also using that asset to generate an income. Money that you didn't have before. It's a reminder of that stability and security that is what real estate offers. Also, the currency, whether that's euros or pounds or dollars, can be a great hedge against the rand. And we, as we are a wealth firm and then separately a real estate business, it's a great addition to your investment portfolio. Our approach and our strategy, very quickly, we look for property in robust locations around the world. Property that we think has a solid investment case. That's from your entry, your strategy to enter. So when you enter the market and why you enter at that time, what the lifespan of that property investment looks like, who will pay your yield, why there's a case for there to be a solid yield paid during that period of the investment. And of course, your exit strategy is very important as well. If you do need to sell the asset, how easy is it to do that? And to release capital for what you might need. So we will consider all of those in our assessment with you, the client. Again, we'll consider different areas where you've got a combination of investor and homeowner, all of those facets which underpin the property market, which drive demand. And if you're concerned about interest rates, let's have a conversation around how we can hedge that at the moment. We've got a lot of short-term rental offerings around in different regions, which can help to bring in a higher rental return to service any debt or higher interest rates. We always say you can't time the market. So when you choose to enter the market, as long as you have an understanding that this is a long-term asset, a long-term investment, you can expect to ride a wave of different changes in the market, and that's the way that it is. We are seeing obviously interest rates on the rise, which will create a barrier to entry at the moment, and that will bring pent-up demand in the future. And then, some major considerations again is your asset value and in which currency you you value that asset, so where you buy property and what the currency is. Our approach, again, we had to provide you with support in this journey. We work for the client, we advise the client. We have considered, or my team, my real estate team, have considered every market. We've got a lot of information, a lot of understanding, a lot of data behind what drives our suggestions to you, the clients. So just set up a meeting and we'll analyze you and your profile and advise accordingly. So we look to invest in property in a responsible manner and in a location that works and is appropriate for you, the buyer. And in this case, and in many cases, there is actually a citizenship or residency angle. So we understand that in-house or in association with partners, so we would advise on that accordingly. But thank you. So we'll move on straight to Mauritius and to Imelda.
Thanks, Megan. Super. I just want to go a little bit back to I think why Sable, why this team. A couple of things that Andrew mentioned, as well as Megan. And yes, that there could be certain complexities in investing abroad. It could be more confusing than investing in property locally in your own country. Obviously, there are different rules. So it's very important for us to really play the role of guiding our clients properly in the most professional way and the most complete way as well. So as Andrew mentioned as well, the client-specific approach that we have is quite unique. The fact that we are on the ground in South Africa, yet there's a presence in Mauritius, in myself and Samina that work very closely on this side, is a real benefit to our guests today, and anybody that would have Mauritius on their radar in terms of future investment, whether it's pure investment, whether it's company set up, purchasing property for residency purposes. So really, there's an opportunity to engage with us on a very individual level, so that there's a very clear understanding of what your specific thinking is, your specific needs, and your scenario. So in terms of pricing and just the idea of where you want to place Mauritius in the future. So we have a number of different ways that we're approached. Very often it would be, we would like to see Mauritius as a plan B. We're concerned about where we are right now, and we'd like to just, be able to purchase property or apply for the residency in Mauritius, or apply for work in Mauritius. And, there are other permits as well, like the retirement residency permit. So all of these things are very different from one another. So we need to establish, where our client is at, and then take them on that specific journey and really provide them with the most professional, most comprehensive information and guidance throughout the whole process from beginning to end. And then obviously the questions are as well, if it is a residency permit, does it come with the passport? At what point would I get my residency? At what level do I need to invest in order to qualify for that? And what would I get for that level of investment? So also, which would be the best location? Which are the best locations in Mauritius to consider purchasing property, whether it's residing in Mauritius or for investment purposes? And why? What are the reasons behind that? What are the amenities? It really takes a presence on the ground, for many years to understand and to have the knowledge that we are able to impart, and that allows us to guide in a professional manner. To this day, many of our clients report that before they reached us as a team, it was confusing in terms of information that is provided generally. People don't always come back with the correct information, and it can lead to a lot of frustration, and we understand all of that. So it really is, we pride ourselves in offering that A to Z solution and really guiding our clients 100% throughout the process, from beginning to end and beyond. Once one settles on the island, or you have an investment property, or you now in the process of setting up business, whatever it is, that's not where it ends. So you really need to be with a team that you feel comfortable with, that is going to remain with you throughout the process, but or identify the process that you particularly fit into, and then to guide you throughout that process, but then also be there beyond that. Yes, we've also, in the last 10 years, since the government has opened up the market in Mauritius for foreign investment, and specifically property purchase, we've made it our business to know all the developers, know the developments that are around, understand who are the most reputable developers, and also the different locations and what's happening, and we update it all the time. So again, rather than trying to approach different people that might have different developers that they would represent, we're able to give you a holistic view and really an unbiased opinion in terms of what is available, what is on offer, and who are in fact the most reputable developers to consider, and which developments should be considered. So I think that's a very important aspect as well. And
if I could just jump in there quickly, it's a really good point. At the moment, with rising inflation, costs of building, costs of off-plan developments are something that are a major consideration for investors, and therefore working with companies that have had their due diligence done, which is something we do as Sable, to check their financing, whether they're backed with private equity, or how they will go ahead and build, and what that build looks like in an inflationary time, and how feasible it is to deliver.
Yeah.
This
Correct.
is a major consideration. So very, very important to work with businesses, who are reputationally in South Africa, and who are ready to be held accountable for this type of thing. So yeah,
I think very important, especially because you're buying something that is not on your doorstep. You know what I mean? You are really investing in something that might not be where you might not be yet. So yeah, I think that's it's extremely important to know that you've got that the security of a team that looks out for you in terms of that aspect specifically. Also just want to mention that the reasons still for most, specifically talking about the South African market, Mauritius is really ticking all the boxes in terms of accessibility. Still, safety is a big reason why South Africa is still a big market for Mauritius. Of course, the tax benefits, which Samina will also touch on when it comes to business setup, and the possibility to also work in Mauritius and run a business in Mauritius and that type of thing, is certainly a huge benefit and very attractive. I think language is very important, so any other consideration in terms of Europe, for instance, makes it a little bit more difficult, or a lot more difficult in terms of language. Mauritius offers excellent international schooling and tertiary education as well now. So, certainly going in the right direction when it comes to that. So for a family situation, Mauritius is really ticking that box as well with very good schooling options. The weather, well, excellent, again, in comparison to Europe, And I want to touch very quickly, sorry, Megan, on just something you mentioned as well, is the exchange rate. Because, if you're going to place yourself in a specific country, and one property prices are one thing, and we'll touch on that as well, but your day-to-day living and expenses in Mauritius will be in rupee. And the Rand rupee exchange rate has been stable over the years, so we've kind of fluctuated between maybe 2.4 to 2.8, kind of in that range. And that is how it's basically been for the last couple of years. And, we don't really foresee that changing very much. So for the South African market, certainly, when you're going to place yourself in a country and you're looking at living expenses, Mauritius really, is very suitable in terms of that aspect. Yeah. Sorry, Megan.
No, that's fine. I was just going to touch on the schooling, but also a community of South Africans, of expats in Mauritius, and healthcare. So, really important considerations when considering that you might actually live somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, historically, the ties have been so strong between South Africa and Mauritius anyway. And, that's not going to change going forward. Mauritius has always been very reliant on South Africa and Africa. So certainly in terms of, regular availability of flights and just an approach from the Mauritian government to be, from an investor-friendly point of view, certainly South Africans and South Africa investors are welcomed in Mauritius. So that's a general feeling. And I think there's a certain feeling of familiarity already, because Mauritius has always been a very big tourism destination for South Africans. So, we've kind of known it over the years. And then, for all other reasons, as I mentioned, the accessibility, the language, the weather, exchange rates, those kind of things, it just, is really a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amal, if you wouldn't mind going on, just to give our listeners a little bit information around different properties, locations, what they can expect, price points, what they might own. Of course, touch on what the returns or yields might be if they did choose to rent the property out. I think it's an important consideration.
Yeah, super. Yeah, with pleasure. So, over the 12 years since the Mauritian market has opened up for property purchase in Mauritius, for foreigners, non-Mauritians, to own property in Mauritius, things have changed a lot over the last 12 years. So initially, we were looking at, your larger Gulf estates, and, there were certain entry levels. Still $500,000 was the entry level to purchase. And it had to be in those specific developments, much the same these days. Most of the developments that are happening that foreigners can purchase into are still those that have been approved by government in certain areas. So, but opposed to the kind of Gulf estate environment where, most of the original developments were on Gulf estates with an integrated kind of resort scheme feel, where there would be a clubhouse and there would be certain amenities, etc., etc. The market has also changed to smaller developments, smaller individual home developments, other lifestyle estates with all sorts of amenities, as well as apartment offerings that might be for pure investment only. So the offering has really grown over the last 12 years as well. And then, of course, I think it's important to mention that if one wants to consider financing a portion of a property or an investment in property, that is available in Mauritius. And the government is kind of indicated that at a level of 70% of the property price, one can approach a local bank or even an offshore bank if you wanted for property financing. That's obviously at the discretion of the particular bank, and one would have to go through all the normal KYCs and all of those things, but that is available. Some of our clients do make use of those offerings, specifically for their investment properties for return on investment. And I think it's fair to say that, the returns can vary anything between, let's say, 4% and 8%, depending if the property is fully managed by a management company. That obviously, there would be a management fee involved, and that would be part of, the costs that you would incur before you see your returns. So certainly you can purchase property in Mauritius to rent out for investment purposes. You may also finance a property up to a certain point. And we can assist you with, and guide you with that as well, and in terms of the whole process. So between Samina and myself, we are also able to offer those services on the ground. And then just generally, I think, the entry level for purchasing property would be, if it's a pure investment property, the government has specifically got documentation out that makes it very clear that as long as you spend over 6 million rupees, obviously whether that's still available, if there's any availability on that, one needs to look around. But that's kind of entry level in terms of a pure investment property. And then there would be no residency attached to that. So no permanent residency as such. If you're looking at the residency, and that would be important to be able to get that residency with your property purchase, which allows you and your spouse and your children up to the ages of 24 to come and go and reside in Mauritius for any period, no specific periods, as long as you own the property. At that level, or in order to qualify for that, you would need to spend $375,000 US or above. So the entry level would be $375,000 US. Yeah. Generally for that, you would probably be able to get a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom apartment in a very nice area. And then obviously, if your needs are different to that, we would be able to guide you in terms of the availability and what those price levels would be as well. Yeah, Megan, lastly, I think I need to just mention briefly that we do, in Mauritius, there is the option to purchase off-plan as well as resale. So we would certainly, once we understand the client's needs, would be able to, include whatever is on offer on both spectrums. Having said that, off-plan in Mauritius is probably the most common and most well-received method to purchase property, because it would allow you to, for instance, sell property in South Africa or move your funds over the period of time of construction. There is virtually zero risk in Mauritius to purchase when it comes to purchasing off-plan, because the government in Mauritius has regulated this market so well in favor of the investor to eliminate any risk whatsoever. So just to briefly go through that, the developers need to sell a certain percentage of the development before they can even start construction. So normally that's 60 or 70% of the development. That means that those agreements, reservation agreements, have been signed, deposits have been paid. So then there would be a bank guarantee that kicks in, where the bank offers to complete a development should the developer falter because they feel they've had enough sales, to just continue and take over and complete the development. And then all monies are transferred over the construction period into a notary account. So the developer never sees any of the funds until they've reached the certain stages of development, and those have been signed off by a third party, and the notary is aware of that. So, very, very carefully and very clearly regulated in favor of the investor. So, for the reasons that I mentioned, I think for our market in South Africa, off-plan is often the route that people prefer to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then finally, I know we are, I'll cover any questions if there are after Samina has chatted to us. But we are looking to do a roadshow next year. I know Megan will be in contact with everybody on that, where we will then have specific properties on offer and be able to sit face to face and, have more personal and individual sessions with everybody.
The Sable team will be traveling countrywide, etc., and we'll be able to meet everyone face to face. So I think we should move on to Samina. We've got a bit of time for questions at the end. Thanks, Imelda. Samina, moments of truth. Can we hear you?
Good afternoon, ladies. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. So I'm going to cover the part of tax structures and relocation in Mauritius. So when you're deciding to move from South Africa to Mauritius, it is a very big decision, and you need to ensure that the place that you're choosing to move to has the required political stability and safety for you and your family, as well as your business and your investments. So Mauritius has a strong financial jurisdiction with decades of successful track record, and we have been portrayed previously as a tax haven, but this is not the case, and we are now fully compliant with the FATF requirements by meeting 40 over 40 of the requirements. Now, in Mauritius, when you decide to look at either investing as a backup plan or for returns, or to relocate in Mauritius, there are different routes that you can adopt. For instance, you can buy a property in Mauritius, and then we will cover how to house that property in a short while. And then under that acquisition of property, if it falls under one of the approved schemes of the government, then you get a residence permit. And this residence permit gives you the right to live and work in Mauritius. Previously, this was not the case, but with the Finance Act 2022 that has just been amended in this year, the residence permit gives you the right to work and live in Mauritius. Or you have other routes that are available in Mauritius for the permit. You have the investor permit route, where you set up your own company and you invest a minimum of $50,000 into the company, and then you can move. You become eligible for the investor permit, and your family can then also come and relocate as dependents to you. It is very important to note that dependents of occupation permits are not allowed to be professionally active in Mauritius, even though there are some information on the web that says that dependents are allowed to work. In fact, what has happened is that there has been a suggestion, a recommendation in the previous finance bill to allow dependents to be professionally active, but it has not been accepted. So you come in, so once the main permit holder, he's allowed to work, but then the dependents no. And the age limit for dependents is 24 years old. Except for the spouse. So you have the investor permit, you have the second one, which is the professional permit, where you're going to be employed by a company in Mauritius and you will be receiving a monthly salary. And you also have the self-employed permit. All these permits are you can get them for up to 10 years. And just like Imelda has covered, we have the retired permit as well, which is available for 10 years. Now, depending on the route that you would like to adopt, investment in property is still an option for you under all these routes. You can decide to come and apply for an investor permit and then later on go for the acquisition of property. No problem, it is possible. The other option that we see a lot of persons covering these days is that they want to come and test drive the country. They want to see that if they are going to come and live here, move their life here, move their family here. They want to ensure that they are able to adapt, that their family will be happy here. So the other route that many families we are seeing are adopting right now is that they're applying for the premium visa. They still keep on working for their business remotely from Mauritius. And then the premium visa is given for 1 year, and that can be extended for another 1 year. So this is we will call it the test drive visa. And it is a very good option. And we have seen that a lot of families, when they have relocated under the premium visa, after the first 6 months, then they decide, okay, we're going to buy a property or we're going to apply for a permit to be able to stay here longer. So when you buy a property or in Mauritius, there are a few ways in which you can structure it. If you are not planning to relocate to Mauritius immediately, but you want to buy a property to get rental income, or you want to buy it as an investment or as a backup home here, then what you can do is that you can house it under a trust. You can house it either under a trust or a domestic company in Mauritius. So the trust, as compared to the domestic company, the trust is it can be used in multiple ways. The trust is also an estate planning tool. It is legislated by the Trust Act in Mauritius, and it also helps you to move when you buy it under the trust, the property will not be directly under your name. And if it is not directly under, it will be under the trust name. It is important to note that whether you're buying a property under a trust or under a domestic company, there is a 5% transfer tax that is applicable on the purchase of the property. So the trust can also hold investments in other businesses that you may have, and that you can plan for the wealth management for your family. This is on one side, the trust, and the trust is taxable at 15% if the beneficiaries of the trust are resident in Mauritius. If the beneficiaries of the trust are not resident in Mauritius, then the tax rate is at 0%. On the other hand, you have the domestic company in which you can house the property. So the domestic company is regulated by the Registrar of Companies. It is a fairly less expensive structure as compared to, for example, the global business company. and you can the property will be owned under the domestic company, and tomorrow if you want to sell the property, you can sell it together with the domestic company. And this is another structure that is really liked by many South African families who are buying property and putting the property up for rental in Mauritius. So we also have the Global Business Company, which is a company which is licensed by the Financial Services Commission, and which is taxed under certain circumstances at 3%. In all these in the Global Business Company, the very important aspect that we need to consider is the substance requirements as provided by the Financial Services Commission. So the very important thing that we need to bear in mind is that you may have different types of structures to house your property, but it all depends on your plans, it all depends on your business, and it all depends on how you envisage the future for you and your family. The other thing is that, let us say you go for a trust structure. The trust can also hold shares in a domestic company that will then hold the shares the property. Or a trust can also hold shares in a global business company. When we have families relocating to Mauritius, many of them already have a will in place in South Africa. They come and let us say they come and they set up a trust. In the trust, there is a letter of wishes that is attached to the trust. Some families also have a will in place in Mauritius that is drafted by a public notary. The important point that you need to bear in mind is that there is a rule in Mauritius, and it is quite a complex legislation. What we believe that the safest advice that we can give you with respect to the forced heirship rule in Mauritius, which is decalcated on the French law, is that if to already distribute all your property to your different heirs prior to your death. This is the safest advice to give with respect to forced heirship, because we have seen in many cases where properties were not spelled out as to whom it will go, or it was not done fairly, and we have heirs who have gone to court to overrule those distribution. So the other two very important points about Mauritius and property acquisition is that in Mauritius we do not have exchange control restrictions, meaning that you can freely move your money once you have transferred money to Mauritius. You can freely move your money from Mauritius to anywhere in the world. You can open personal bank accounts or company bank accounts in the Mauritian currency and in all the leading currencies in the world. And as long as you have all the supporting evidence for your transactions, you do not have any issues or restrictions in terms of the movement of money. So no exchange control restriction. The other point is that, let us say you buy a property today for $1 million, and when after a few years you decide to sell it for $3 million, there is no capital gains tax. There is no capital gains tax in Mauritius. So these are two very important points to bear in mind. So as I have explained, the trust,
we seem to have lost Samina again. I see that there's just a few things that she's got to cover again, wills and estate duty as well. Samina, are you back?
Yeah.
Samina, won't you cover the point about wills, and if you wouldn't mind just briefly finishing off in the next 2 to 3 minutes, if that's possible.
Okay, no problem. So
I think what we might need to do is just follow up with the final points and information. If you have any questions, won't you send them over to us, and we'll do a written Q&A as well in the follow-up email, which will have the recording of the webinar itself. If Samina does for any reason manage to come back, we'll let her finish herself, but I think written will be fine.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we had a connection issue. So I would like to finish off on the point of wills. So if you have a will in South Africa that has been duly registered and you're planning to buy property in Mauritius and house it in one of the structures which are available, then I would advise you to have a will in Mauritius as well, that is drafted by a public notary registered in Mauritius. However, if the safest advice, as I have said, is, and to avoid the forced heirship rules to come into place, is to merely distribute all your properties prior to death, as this will mitigate all the risk of court cases in that case. Thank you very much, and please feel free to send us all your questions.
Please do send those questions in for Samina, and we are going to be doing a roadshow, and also very happy to set up personal calls with you as well. We can either do a Zoom or a Teams call with Samina on, so just let us know. Yeah, Marcel did ask a question. It was about the importance of wills. Very important point. I think what's important, ladies and gentlemen, before we kind of wrap up, is what Samina has been touching on, and a lot of the stuff that Imelda and Megan have spoken about. These are just important considerations. I think in a webinar like this, to actually go into the real details, sort of tax advice, etc., is not really possible. But I think what we all agree on, and this is what we always preach at Sable, is understand fully the game board that you're going to be playing in, and understand the rules. And the rules are really around South African exchange control, how that links in with Mauritius, the tax implications if you have an investment sitting in Mauritius, how does that link back and affect your South African tax return? That's all very complex, and it'll be very specific to each individual case. And I think more particularly, Samina touched on all the different types of structures, which are very, very tax efficient. But again, it's just understanding how that has an effect. And the other thing as well that I think one also needs to consider is if you're physically moving to Mauritius and you're going to cease your tax residency in South Africa, there's an exit tax when you leave South Africa. There's a lot of planning required there. That's all stuff that we can obviously engage and advise you on in a proper one-on-one type of environment. So certainly, I think just from my side, from a wrapping up perspective, do lots of planning, do lots of research. You've got really good team on the screen here. Each individual is a specialist in their own right, and yeah, just take care. And certainly from my side, I think what we should maybe do is just give Samina 30 seconds. If you've maybe got or maybe Imelda, let's start with you actually. Samina's sort of on and off. Maybe just a sort of a parting comment before we all go and enjoy our Christmas break.
So yeah, just two questions that I pick up there, Hannes and Hendrik. Thanks, guys. In Samina's absence, there is no estate duty in Mauritius, so that should cover your question immediately. But of course, there's so many other things that I think we should, have a one-on-one with you on, Hannes, to really discuss all of that, but just for benefit of everybody. And then Hendrik, yeah, unfortunately, Mauritius is not offering passports, is not offering citizenship at this stage. Only the property permanent residency option which you will get if you purchase the property at the level of $375,000 and above. And that allows you basically to reside in Mauritius for any period of time, and for as long as you own the property. So the actual residency goes with the property. So if you should sell the property down the line, the residency will go with it. So that's basically what is on offer. So if it is a resale property at that level, you would immediately get the residency once it's approved by government. So there's always an approval that needs to be done, and we help you with that process as well. Just purely because Mauritius wants to know who is residing in the country. And if it's an off-plan property, normally at kind of foundation level, when it is time for the notary to issue the title deed, you will be receiving the residency again with all the approvals done. And that might be before the property even delivers. So yeah, just briefly. And just looking forward to a roadshow maybe, and all your questions, please, Megan, you will guide us how to direct that directly to Sable, and standing by.
Yes, exactly. So just, to close off, we offer a 30-minute consult in person or via Teams. We're all in different places today, and sincere apologies for the issues we've had, generator failures and inverter failures, and we've all had to change location 5 minutes before the webinar, so a little bit of chaos on our side, but please follow up with any questions you have, and we're available for a 30-minute call, myself, Imelda and Samina, with anyone who would like it. So just send that across to us and questions, and we will send a follow-up email with this in video and answering any questions that we haven't got to yet.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.